Let us light our chalice with our gathering blessing, in the light of truth and the warmth of love. We gather to seek and seek to share. With this life I am living
in a world that's wild and free,
and with this voice I am speaking
my truth with clarity,
and with this heart I am loving
what once was and what will be,
and with this life I am living
both with joy and dignity.
With this life I am living
in a world that's wild and free,
and with this voice I am speaking
my truth with clarity,
and with this heart I am loving
what once was and what will be,
and with this life I am living
both with joy and dignity.
The living tradition we share draws from many sources. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life.
Words and deeds of prophetic women and men, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life.
Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit.
Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another
our mutual trust and support.
Good morning. I'm Kimbrus Bond, and along with the entire worship team of Cascade Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, we welcome you to this sacred time together. We are physically distant in this virtual world, but we are very much together on this journey. I invite you to settle into your seat. Take a deep breath in and out, and imagine all the others listening to this service, some familiar and some new. And take another deep breath in as we collectively send healing thoughts to those who need comfort in our community and around the world. There's one big community of people out there, and we're all connected. In Unitarian Universalism, we rejoice in the worth and dignity of each person, and we celebrate the interdependent web of all existence, all creation. UUs don't have a creed in the same way some religions do, but we draw from many sources for inspiration. So many wonderful words have been written or said by people down through the ages that help us to expand our vision and understanding. For over 200 years, those identifying as Unitarians and Universalists and Unitarian Universalists have been dancing with the holy. At times we approach the holy with rational minds, while other times we are in awe of the mystery and wonder. Our 6 UUA sources of wisdom, shared by the prior video, are diverse, and some are ancient while some are very modern. They come from prophetic voices, inner wisdom from life and from nature all around us, and they form the basis of our faith. After all, ours will always be a living tradition that reflects the ever-flowing stream of human thought and spirituality. Our tradition is held together by our profound respect and love for these teachings and inspirations. The sources are the ideas and deeds that reflect human experience, but they also point to that which lies beyond human understanding. They remind us that first and foremost, Unitarian Universalism is a religion rooted in the experience of the holy. They serve as a guide in determining what is valid, deep, and meaningful about living. We should also remember that when using diverse sources, we must be sure to represent them correctly and not take something out of context in an attempt to bring a more multicultural perspective to worship, which might devalue or disrespect those from whom we borrow. We should also be willing to be changed. Every new person we encounter or cultural approach to a familiar theme gives us something new. It teaches us by illuminating new facets, giving nuance and depth if we allow it. As I pondered on the sources typed in our hymnal, and I read Kathleen Rowlands' words about our sources in the book Sources of Our Faith, I wondered how others in our congregation approach the sources for their lives. And so today, we will hear from some of them. On our journey of life, we will ask many questions. Sometimes we find answers. Sometimes we sure don't. But in seeking truth and meaning, we turn to wise sources for direction. And we show ourselves and others grace and love along the way. Let us worship. Please join me in spirit and voice to sing I Am Finding My Way. It is a simple tune allowing for meditation and reflection. Thank you for joining today. I am finding my way, I am finding my way, I am finding my way back to now. I am I am finding my way back to now. I am finding my way. I am finding my way. I am finding my way back to now. I am finding my way. I am finding my way. I am finding my way back to now. I am finding my way. I am finding my way. I am finding my way back to now. I am finding my way. I am finding my way. I am finding my way back to now. I am finding my way. I am finding my way. I am finding my way back to now. I am finding my way. I am finding my way. I am finding my way back to now.
I like to rise when the sun she rises early in the morning. I like to hear those songbirds singing merrily among the meadows, and hurrah for the life of a country boy, and a ramble in the new mown hay. When Kimbris asked me to represent the nature traditions, the earth-based spiritual traditions, I thought, oh great, I get to frolic naked in the moonlight. But my wife wouldn't let me, at least not on camera. For many years, I identified as a neo-heathen, one of the new pagans. And I did that partly to cause a little mischief, as John Lewis would say, necessary trouble. In those days, not that I've changed that much, I was kind of arrogant and given to poking people where I thought they needed poking. And as I've gotten older, I realized that if I'd have paid attention to my own feelings instead of worrying about theirs, there was something that I had trouble with about the Christian, particularly spiritual tradition. And that was that it held itself separate from nature. God created the earth. Man was given dominion over the animals. The earth and its resources were ours to use. And I didn't like that. That something about that felt inherently wrong. And the other thing that bothered me was this certainty that we knew what was right. We had the answer. And in my experience, spirituality, and particularly it's designed to deal with unanswerable questions, to allow for and participate in what is essentially mysterious. And so this certainty about spirituality really didn't make any sense in terms of my experience. And the things I liked about neo-paganism, these earth-based spiritual traditions, and the ones I was most familiar with were the ones that were close to me, the indigenous folks, the Lakota and Cheyenne and Crow and Blackfoot Indians who lived in the neighborhood I grew up in, was this notion that we are all connected. We are not separate from the earth. You know, these spiritual traditions grew out of a need to understand and make sense of and live in harmony with what supported life. You know, the plants and the animals and the water resources and the weather. And the notion that each and every one of those things was connected with God, or was its own, God had his own representation of divinity, was something that made a lot of sense to me. So the pantheism, the God is everywhere and God is in everything of those traditions made a lot of sense. As did the notion that this was something that we really couldn't understand all the way, that we could experience, that we could be in awe of, that we could feel, but probably not really wrap words around or know for certain. That was something that I felt very deeply. I have a reading today from the great Lakota chief, Crazy Horse, that speaks not only to these earth-based spiritual traditions, but also to the arrogance of the European colonizers. The red nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world, a world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations, a world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity among all living things. And the young white ones will come to those of my people and ask for this wisdom. I salute the light within your eyes, where the whole universe dwells. For when you are at that center within you, and I am that place within me, we shall be one. Thank you.
I was asked, what is the relevance or importance of the Baha'i faith to me? When I was about 5 years old, we went to visit my uncle. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a large extended family. I was loved. In fact, I was treasured. Going from Brooklyn to Upper Manhattan is a long trip. It takes well over an hour, and that's a long time for a 5-year-old. It must have been after rush hour, because the subway was crowded, but not crushingly so. My mom was seated, and I was standing at the pole in the center of the car. There were other people standing also, workers coming home from work, from night shift, and others going to work. Suddenly, the train lurched forward, and everybody fell forward. Everyone was thrown off balance. There were hands everywhere, all over me. All these people were holding me steady. I was conscious of all these hands, and they were all different colors. I could see that. I saw it, and my 5-year-old heart and brain knew that I was safe. The world was a good and safe place. I'm not naive. Bad things happen, lots of bad things happen, and people are not always good or kind or moral, but basically that consciousness that the world is a good place has stayed with me. Deep in my gut, I know that people are good, and they share that goodness all over everywhere, the whole world. No matter their skin color, their language, their class, or their religion. They love their children. They bleed the same color, definitely, and they want a decent life. The Talmud says there is a spark of goodness in everyone. I know this to be true. I believe there is a force, a mystery that guides the universe. You may call this mystery science, or spirituality, or essence, or nature. I happen to call this mystery God. It doesn't matter. It's all one essence, It's all one essence or spirituality or science, and it's all good. For years, I looked for a place where I belonged with these thoughts and people who actually walked their talk. I found the Unitarians eventually. Here were people who were really searching, open to new ideas, and acting on making the world a better place. I could rest here. Still, it wasn't quite right. It didn't meet my more esoteric or spiritual part that spoke to my soul. At 40 years old, I was invited to a picnic where someone handed me a card. I put the card in my pocket and didn't think about it. Then one day I found that card, and it said, God is one. Mankind is one. All the religions are one. Create unity and harmony. Wow, this is what I believe, finally. This is the Baha'i Faith and its prophet, Baha'u'llah. Its teachings that all the prophets or messengers have come to this earth to teach us based at the level of understanding that we are at this time. Examples. Abraham and Moses came at a time of anarchy, and they brought us the law. Buddha taught, bad things don't matter as long as we keep our good in our hearts. And of course, Jesus taught us about love. Each prophet builds on the message of the last and gives us more information. They each bring a message that we are ready to understand. With each one, we learn a little more. This latest messenger, Baha'u'llah, tells us what we need to do to bring peace to this world. The information is specific, tells us that until the United States brings peace between black and white, we will not be spiritually great. And he tells us how to do this. He tells us that men and women are equal. He tells us more about the afterlife. Like, you don't get to sit on a cloud. Thank heavens. There's work to be done. I understand work. I don't understand clouds. He gives us a path, a plan to follow and create more peace and love in this world. He brings us practical ways to bring this about and gives us the freedom to make it happen in our own small or large ways. Baha'i spiritual and practical teachings bring relevance to my daily life. It brings me direction, and it brings me optimism, peacefulness, and fulfillment. Unitarian Universalism helps me with the practical for today. On an everyday basis, UU helps me to carry out the teachings of the Baha'i Faith. A gentle, practical, optimistic religion for this age, which helps me to feel safe and happy in this struggling world.
Gather all people beneath the shadow of thy bounty, and cause them to unite in harmony, so that they may become as the rays of one sun, as the waves of one ocean, and as the fruit of one tree. Gather all people beneath the shadow of thy bounty, and cause them to unite in harmony, so that they may become as the rays of one sun, as the waves of one ocean, and as the fruit of one tree.
The Old Testament, book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, contains the story of Abraham. The Quran has a similar story in its second chapter. The Bible story is a fun one to read for UUs. It gives hope to we older people about our creative powers. Abraham, called Ibrahim in the Quran, at the age of 86, had his first son, Ishmael. So the story in the Bible goes that his wife, Sarah, who was nearly as old, could not conceive. She offered her Egyptian slave girl, Hagar, to Abraham. Abraham took about 10 years to decide what to do, and then decided to go in her, and Ishmael was born. With the Lord's intervention, at the age of 100, he and Sarah birthed Isaac. Both sons, with the Lord's covenant to Abraham, were to have more offspring than the sands on the beach or the stars in the sky. Ishmael founded the Arab nations leading up to the messenger of God, Muhammad, who received the last covenant and word of Allah. Isaac became the father of Judaism, and through his son Jacob, Jesus led to Christianity. These three religions are favored by 60% of the people on earth. The idea of a covenant with the Lord, or only one God, is considered the beginning of monotheism. Before the Abrahamic story, humans were primarily polytheistic. So Kimbrus asked me, why is the Genesis story relevant or important to me, a Unitarian for 58 years? I'm a believer in evolution in many aspects of our lives. I've evolved from the traditional Protestant family beliefs to my own in my search for the mythical truth. Currently, you could call me what William Murray defines as a UU religious naturalist. I've been captivated by the recent books exploring the evolution of God in our tribe of Homo sapiens. Yuval Harari's Sapien was a fun way to get my mind set up to understand how our tribe's gods would be represented. As we evolved, our special ability was how we Homo sapiens could cooperate in a flexible, cooperative manner. When we were hunter-gatherers, we made gods of those things in nature that were important to us. As we moved to farming and villages, we found the need for a collection of polytheistic gods. As our tribe began to live in towns and cities, create empires and kings, monotheistic gods were helpful in keeping large nationalistic groups and countries unified. I now know that Genesis was not dictated by Moses, by the one Jewish God, Yahweh. Genesis was put together after the year 587 BCE, when Jerusalem was sacked by the Babylonians. During their exile in Babylon, Hebrew elites and priests created and combined stories about their origin. When freed from the Babylonians by the Assyrians in 539 before the Common Era, they returned to their holy land, Judea, rebuilt Jerusalem, and their one all-powerful God's temple. This one God was for the whole country of Judea. We have now evolved to almost 8 billion people on earth. The Western nations are mostly secular. The religious landscape of the United States is shifting to agnostic, atheist, or nothing in particular. Our modern technology ushers in thoughts that we are the gods. We can even create life. Natural selection has been upstaged by genetic engineering. So do I have faith in anything? Yes. I believe UU's 7 principles, when used, will change our world's nations as they struggle to become interdependent with each other in trade and life's struggles together.
One of our sources is personal experience. For me, that is the experience of my relationship with Christ. So yes, I believe Jesus was the Son of God. He was crucified, died and was buried, and he rose again. In my life, that experience is, because of crucifixion, I am able to forgive. I am able to be forgiven. Because of the incredible life force that flung the universe into space, also raised Christ from the dead. That same incredible creative life force within me has brought healing. The other source is the Hebrew Christian scripture. And to me, my experience is based in that scripture. And I've found, to me, I've always believed it. I haven't had a problem with believing it. But I've more recently come across people like Bart Ehrman, who I completely disagree with. And my response is, where are the Christians, scientists, who can rebut those statements? And during this pandemic, I've spent a lot of time online, and I've found some of those people that indeed scientific research more and more has discovered evidence that supports the Bible, supports the Hebrew Christian scriptures as correct and accurate. For example, in Job, considered to be the oldest document in the Hebrew scripture, it describes the earth as a circle and a sphere, when all other ancient texts describe the earth as flat and sitting on a turtle or a fish. It's only the Hebrew scripture that actually describes earth accurately as a sphere and hanging in space. The Hebrew scripture refers to there being pathways in the deep long before a sailor discovered the currents in the ocean. The Hebrew scripture describes there being mountain ranges in the deep, fountains in the deep, And only in recent history have they found scientific evidence that this is true. There's also now DNA evidence to support the scriptural timeline for humanity. So in all of this, I find what I learned as a child in the first church I was a part of, the Evangelical Covenant Church. When they state their beliefs and you go online and look at it, what it says is, we believe in the Old and New Testament as the only perfect rule for faith, doctrine, and conduct. And this I do believe, and I will strive to live my life by the concepts and instructions for conduct that I find in the scripture. And a big part of that is patterning my life after what I see in the scripture that describes Christ. So that is my experience with the sources that the UU Church holds to. And I am very thankful for them.
And as the fruit of one tree, as the waves of one ocean, and as the fruit of one tree, as the waves of one ocean, and as the fruit of one tree, as the waves of one ocean, and as the fruit of one tree.
Greetings, my fellow congregants. So I ask you, how are you doing? This is a tough time. It's been a tough few months. It's been a tough 4 or 5 years, at least for me, and I'm sure for most of us. With CUUF shut down in a physical sense, it is more important than ever that we communicate with each other. We're lucky. We have Zoom, we have FaceTime, we have telephone. You can imagine what it would be like a generation ago, how much more isolated we would be. But it's really not enough. I know I at least feel isolated. I feel lonely. I feel disconnected in spite of all the technology that helps us communicate. What I have found, and what of course has been known for centuries and centuries, is that the natural world, the outdoors, the rhythms of the earth around us are incredible solace or incredible support in terms of maintaining our sanity, combating depression, giving us a sense of connection to the larger world. Wenatchee's lucky. We have trails, we have the foothills, we have the river, we have forests, and for those of us with the good fortune to have a backyard, we have gardens and small groups of trees or grasses or whatever. The matter is that they're living things. There are bees, there are birds. And we need to be aware and connect with those things on a daily basis. So I urge you, venture out. Turn off the TV. Don't listen to the news cycle. Even stop doing wonderful things like playing Scrabble with your kids. And get outside. Get your whole bubble outside. And walk through this world. Walk through this world that we are so lucky to live in. And we are so, so connected to. So let me leave you with two quotes that are perhaps lesser known, even though well-known conservationists. First is John Muir, who simply says, "Of all the paths in life you walk, make sure some of them are dirt." And Sigurd Olson in The Singing Wilderness said, "Joys come from simple and natural things. Mists over meadows, sunlight on leaves, the path of the moon over the water." Picture those things. Picture them and then get out and see them. May it be so.
I'm Sharon Mayhope Pettit Sensei, a Zen lay teacher. My connection to Buddhism started when I was 19 in 1967 at a Baptist youth convention. But it was 34 years later, in 2001 and 9/11, that I understood what Buddhism offered me and all beings. There was a television news story that showed Palestinian women zaggerating on the West Bank in celebration of 3,000 lives lost. My anger was all-consuming, and I had a moment where I was able to actually see myself in the act, catch myself in the act of creating the hate that I was so upset about. Knowing that Buddhism promised a way out of suffering, I turned to what I had been introduced to as a 19-year-old. With my husband Todd, I sat down and started to do Zazen for the first time in years. In a sense, I've never gotten up from that cushion. What Buddha taught 2,500 years ago was that we create our own suffering. He had a quest in which he looked for a way out of suffering for all human beings. What he discovered was that there are things that make us suffer, but it's not really that these things occur. It's that we resist them. They are birth, old age, sickness, loss of people and things we love, and death of ourselves and loved ones. We can't will them not to happen, but we can control our reaction when they happen. I was ordained as a Zen sensei in 2018, and what I teach is the Buddha Dharma of self-awareness, of creating my own reality. My real practice, my soul practice, is to sit in meditation and see my mind creating anger, fear, and discontent. Sorry to say that after all these years, my mind is still willful and insistent on creating more suffering. That is why I must practice every day. If I let up, my suffering increases. I have a great vow that I say every day. It goes like this: however innumerable all beings are, I vow to care for them all. However inexhaustible delusions are, I vow to relinquish them all. However immeasurable gates to truth are, I vow to enter them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it. The vow really is saying that in order to accomplish my great vow of caring for all beings, I have to recognize my delusions and opinions and see through them. This is so I can see the many truths that show themselves each moment, and to do this endlessly. Truthfully, I found this to be difficult in the current situation, where the world seems to be on fire with the COVID virus, and the president is throwing gasoline on the fire. But still I sit and recognize that the virus is as much a part of the nature of the cosmos as I am. That does not mean I accept it passively. but to not be blinded by my fear and discomfort at the way things are, rather to be open and ready to see what must be done and do it without complaint or judgment. To see that the man who sits in the White House is really a small bully boy, trying to pretend to be big enough and knowing he is failing. I can have compassion for his suffering and the suffering he causes. Without fear or anger, I am then free to act in ways that can mitigate the suffering of all beings who are affected by his action or inactions. Without allowing myself to fall into the trap of judgment, I can be calm and ready to see the truth as it is right here and right now. Now, I'm not a saint, and I'm not always wise, so I have devised a new koan for myself. A koan is a question in Zen that is used to frustrate the logical brain and gain insight into a question from a deeper holistic level. This koan is just for me, and it is a play on the first big breakthrough koan of Zen, Mu, or does a dog have Buddha nature? As I sit, I breathe in, and on the out-breath I ask, does Trump have Buddha nature? I'm still awaiting my big breakthrough on this koan, but it does allow a little insight and compassion to arise regarding this situation that we find ourselves in right here and right now.
Please pray with me. Oh, Great Spirit, we are grateful for life, for the easy times and the challenges that help build our character and build resilience through life. Today is a new day, a new opportunity to listen, to love, to learn. So I ask myself, where do I hear Spirit today? What wisdom spoke new meaning to me? What was challenging or intriguing? May today we listen for that small sacred voice calling us to listen to wisdom, to love afresh, and to learn more wholly what it means to be in this life, in this community, and in this world. May it be so. Please raise your hands, your spirit, your voice, and join me in singing, We Shall Be Known.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning
As we extinguish the chalice, please join together in our chalice extinguishing blessing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now raise your hands in the spirit of connection as we sing our closing song together.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet